Among the most abundant resources on the planet is water. But of the many sources of water, only a small percentage is actually drinkable freshwater. And among the freshwater resources on the planet, an even smaller percentage is available for human use. Because of the climate change phenomenon, there is a looming threat to the global water supply.
Water is scarce. We need to keep clean sources of water available. And there is a potential conflict, as we know, for use of water, availability of water. Fresh water is a very, very small amount of the water on the face of the earth. And because of this precious resource, it doesn't show up where all the people are. And with climate change and the effects that we're seeing from global climate change, that availability is going to change over time.
Climate change. Not only does this phenomenon threaten water patterns, ocean levels, but it also will affect freshwater resources.
71% of the land's surface area is covered with water. But of that surface area, 96.5% of the water is saltwater. Only 3.5% is fresh water, and over 70% of that fresh water is locked up in the polar ice caps and in glaciers. So it's not accessible to us. And if we take a look at what part of that 3.5% is actually usable by humans and the environment, it's only 1%. People that are in water scarcity, we say, have less than 1.7 cubic meters of water per year per person.
1.7 cubic liters of water per year? Naturally, water scarcity can also be a threat to global stability, and is a resource that could lead to conflict among nations.
If you look at 1.7 cubic meters, it's not a lot. And 80% of the world's population has scarce water. We have water on the face of the earth, and if we just divided it by the number of people, that would be one statistic. However, the water isn't distributed evenly across the face of the earth. And with global climate change, where the water is today is not where it will be tomorrow. So the water and the density of water, the amount that comes down in precipitation will change over time. So areas that are currently flush with water may become deserts. Deserts may flourish. The water and the temperature, precipitation and temperature mean biomes. So grassland savannas may appear where there are currently forests. Desert may come in where the savannas were. As we change these biomes, biodiversity gets impacted, and therefore our quality of life as a human species is also diminished.
When the issue of water resources and climate change come together, according to Dr. Bowerman and many in the scientific community, the outcome, at the present rate, is nothing but dire.
If all of the glaciers and all of the ice melted, that would raise sea level by 2.7 kilometers. That's how much water is tied up in the ice. And we are melting very quickly along some of these ice caps and in the glacial areas. Climate change will decrease the amount of runoff. It will increase typhoon, it will increase hurricanes on our side. We get things called global weirding now, where we have very intense storms.
Like dominoes, the warming climate will affect one thing after another. The environmental impact will create one disaster after another.
We have potential for more intense and more frequent El Nino and La Nina events, which also affect climate. They affect increased drought rates. So there are a lot of impacts that are going to occur from climate change. And it will be most impacted in the tropics. The tropics have had a very stable temperature regime. So altering the temperature by 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees Celsius will cause dramatic shifts in biodiversity. The plants, the animals have adapted to the temperature regime that's been fairly stable since the last glacial period. So we are looking at greatest impacts in the tropics where we have our greatest biodiversity, but the specialization of those species for this climate will impact them negatively. When you look at the impacts of climate, it means that people will migrate. It will be like we're having with a conflict right now in Syria where Europe is being inundated with a lot of refugees. We will have many refugees caused by climate change. It will be because crops have failed, because there is no more potable drinking water within those areas, or there's too much water. We've destroyed the infrastructure of our countries because of mega storms. We will have greater conflicts. So the ability to try to manage these water resources and anticipate effects of climate change is very important when we're looking at having a peaceful world. We need to start working on our negotiations yesterday.
There is hope, and it comes from a global mobilization of efforts to decrease CO2 emissions, reduction of fossil fuel usage, and energy conservation.
I would have to say today, the biggest threat to water comes to be climate change, increased droughts, changes in weather patterns, precipitation. The only thing that humans can do is decrease carbon, CO2 emissions and other greenhouse gases. The Native Americans said we should look at 7 generations. We're not looking 7 generations down the road. What we are looking at is what do we need today